Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty amazing, the science of how you can literally reshape your own mind. You see, the person you are right now isn't set in stone, not even close. And it all starts with understanding this secret battle that's happening inside your own head. So let's just jump right in with a huge question. Think about it. When you decide to hit snooze, or eat that cookie, or maybe finally start that big project, who is really making that call? You probably think, well, me, of course. But what neuroscience is telling us is it's a whole lot more complicated and, frankly, way more interesting than that. Here's the truth, and it's a little startling. You aren't a single unified you. You're more like a neural parliament. Yeah, a parliament. A whole collection of competing voices all fighting for control of the microphone, all trying to steer the ship. And your final decision? That's just whichever side happens to win the vote in that moment. And if we zoom in on that parliament, we'd see it's made up of these political parties. We call them neural networks. These are just huge webs of brain cells all connected together, and each one has its own agenda, its own desires, and its own idea about what you should do next. You've totally felt this in real life, right? That argument you have with yourself over a cookie. That's not you being indecisive. That is a literal debate happening between your neural networks. One network sees a quick, high-energy food source and yells, yes, go for it. Another, the long-term planner, is screaming, no, think of the diet. And then a third one, the negotiator, chimes in, okay, how about just one and we promise we'll go for a run later. It's this constant, messy, dynamic conflict. But here's the thing. This internal battle, it isn't a bug. It's a feature. It is directly tied to your brain's most incredible superpower, its ability to change. And this is where we get to the really good stuff, the part about how you can actually take the wheel. The master key that unlocks all of this is a concept called brain plasticity. I mean, think about it. Just like a piece of plastic, you can heat it up, you can mold it into a completely new shape, and when it cools down, it holds that shape. Your brain is doing that constantly. Every single experience you have is remolding it, and it's holding on to those new shapes. So what does this really mean for you? It means you are not just a passenger watching this inner battle play out. You can actually influence the outcome. You can choose to strengthen some of those neural networks and let others weaken. You can, quite literally, be the sculptor of the person you want to become. But, okay, there is a catch. Your brain, it actually peaked when you were 2 years old. No joke. That's when you had the maximum number of connections between your neurons. It was like this wild, overgrown jungle of potential. And from that point on, your brain's main job is to start pruning things back. And this pruning process is how we all go from what's called fluid intelligence as a kid, that amazing ability to learn basically any language or skill thrown at you, to what we have as adults, crystallized intelligence. You build a solid, efficient model of how the world works, which is great. But it also makes your brain a little more stubborn, a little more resistant to change. Which, of course, leads us to the most important question of all. If the default setting for an adult brain is to just settle into its ways, to kind of degenerate by not changing, how do we fight that? How do we push back and actively, intentionally choose who we're going to become?
Well, the answer is surprisingly simple, though I'll admit, not always easy. You've got to give your brain a workout. You have to treat it like a muscle that needs to be pushed if you want it to grow stronger.
And Neuroscientist, they figured out the single best tool for the job: challenge. Finding that sweet spot, that perfect zone right between this is frustrating and I can totally do this. When you push yourself to learn new things, you are forcing your brain to build brand new pathways. All right, first, let's talk about how to manage that team of rivals in your head. There's this super powerful strategy called the Ulysses contract. The idea is you admit that your future self might not be as strong-willed as you are right now. So you make a decision now to lock that future you into better behavior. It's actually a really simple process. You just anticipate a moment of weakness. Say you get lonely on Sunday nights. So in your moment of strength, you create a barrier. You get all the alcohol out of the house. See, you're basically rigging the game so that your better self wins that future vote. It's brilliant. But what happens when you don't just do this once in a while, but you build your entire life around seeking out challenges? Well, there's a landmark study of Catholic nuns that gives us this absolutely breathtaking look at the power of this idea over a whole lifetime. The results were just wow. After these nuns passed away, autopsies showed that many of their brains were just riddled with the physical signs of advanced Alzheimer's disease. But here's the kicker. In life, they showed no symptoms of cognitive decline. None. And why? Because their lives were so challenging and socially complex, full of chores, games, debates. They were constantly building new neural roadways. So even as old paths were breaking down, they were busy paving new ones, creating what scientists call cognitive reserve. Now, this whole idea of building cognitive reserve is more important today than ever before, because we now have this incredible, unprecedented new tool for creating the very challenges our brains need to thrive: artificial intelligence.
You know, Steve Jobs famously called the computer a bicycle for the mind. Well, if that's true, then AI is a motorcycle for the mind. It's this powerful engine that can let us move intellectually so much faster and further than we ever could before. But the absolute key to using this motorcycle correctly is knowing the difference between two types of effort. First, there's vicious friction. This is the mindless, soul-crushing busy work that actually dulls your brain. We need to outsource all of that to AI. Then there's virtuous friction. This is the good stuff, the real brain-building challenge. We need to use AI to get more of this. So how do you actually do that? Well, stop using AI like a simple assistant and start using it like a sparring partner. Ask it to find the flaws in your brilliant idea. Prompt it to argue against you. Tell it, be brutally honest and show me my blind spots. That is the kind of virtuous friction that forces your brain to grow new connections.
Look, this constant drive for novelty, for challenge, it's not some self-help trick. It is a fundamental feature of your brain's operating system. Your brain is a nonstop competitive marketplace for neural real estate. And to see just how deep this internal competition really runs, let's look at a question humans have asked forever. Why in the world do we dream? There's this wild new theory that suggests the answer has everything to do with this battle for brain territory. Just think about it for a second. Our planet rotates, so we spend about half our lives in darkness. During that time, our visual system is basically offline, and that makes its precious neural real estate vulnerable to a hostile takeover from our other senses, like hearing and touch. So, this theory proposes that dreaming is the brain's defense mechanism. It blasts the visual cortex with all this random activity every 90 minutes, all night long, just to protect its territory. How cool is that? So, the ultimate takeaway here is this. Your brain is never standing still. It's not static. It's a dynamic, competitive system that is constantly, relentlessly fighting to rewire itself based on whatever you feed it. It thrives on challenge. It craves novelty. It is always changing, whether you want it to or not. So the only question left to ask yourself is, what challenge are you going to give it?